Welcome to Fantasy Football Today, DFS. My name is Nejad. It is Thursday, early evening, and you know what that means. That means it's time for our game-by-game breakdown. It's time for Mike's top three. It's time for our cheat sheet, and it's time for Mike to pop open a, Liquid Death? I think I just heard it. The audience missed it because it was right before we went live. Is it a Liquid Death today, Mike?
It is not a Liquid Death today, Sia.
Oh, no.
It is not. However, I had a Liquid Death earlier today, but we're going to have a little blood orange here. It's an Italian soda. It's good stuff too, but no Liquid Death today. I did throw you off cracking that. I realized we were almost live. I wanted to crack it before we were live.
No. Mike, I like the crack while we're live. It like inspires me to push through to the rest of the show. So speaking of the rest of the show, we have our 10-game slate that we're about to go over. We're going to do our cheat sheet, of course, Mike's top three at each position. And then we're going to touch on the Sunday slate a little bit. You know, it's kind of weird. It's role reversal from last week, right? Where we had 3 games on Saturday last week, and then we had the 10-game slate on Sunday. We've got the 10-game slate on Saturday, which you know, we don't want to, and I did this on Solo Pod. We didn't want to necessarily go game by game for all 13 of these games. So what we're going to do is we're going to go game by game for the Saturday slate, and then we're definitely going to touch on that Sunday slate. So once we do the cheat sheet in the top 3, I think normally you're conditioned to be like, okay, I guess the show is over. Maybe I can get out of here. Not the case this week. So once we do our cheat sheet, we're actually going to go right into some roster construction, some plays that Mike and I like for the Sunday slate. Reminder, everybody, the FFT DFS contest is live for Saturday and Sunday. Sunday's 100 people, and it's almost full. Saturday is 200 people, and it's only about half full at this point, so you got time to join that. It's $5 for each contest. Mike, first of all, how you doing? I guess maybe we'll share some showdown thoughts at the end of the show at some point. We know we have the Jets-Jags coming up tonight. I think Mike and I, spoiler alert, I think we both kind of like the Jets here, whether you're taking it, you know, I think money line's probably the play. You can get it at -130 for all you bettors out there. But Mike, how you feeling about tonight's game? But more importantly, how you feeling about this 10-game slate? It's weird, right? Because we have so much weather that we kind of have to be concerned with, right?
So much weather to be concerned with, not only on the 10-game slate, but tonight as well. But I'm feeling good about tonight's game. Do lean towards the Jets. You know, it's fun to have a Jets-Jaguars game in week 16 that does have playoff implications. It's absolutely beautiful if you're a fan of either one of those franchises. But as far as the 10-game slate, I actually really, really like it. It feels more like a 3 to 4 game slate for me personally, but I've got my stances. I'll be heavy overweight on those stances. And I like it because I think there are a lot of games out there that you should not be touching at all this week.
Yeah, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing your stances, and we'll get right to it. We're going to go there's the second game we're going to talk about, Mike. I'm really intrigued by, and I'm intrigued by in a lot of different ways, maybe to pivot away from it, but I want to get your thoughts on it. But the first game I just want to talk about real quick is the Texans +3 at the Titans. It's a 35.5 point total. You'll see, I mean, if you haven't looked at the slate yet, everybody that's listening, and I see everybody in the chat. I see you, Andrew and Roy and Alex and Buffalo Woes, Mark Henderson, Mike Chavez, always in here, Eric Powell. Appreciate everybody being in here. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you review the podcast, and make sure you get into our FFT DFS contest. But, you know, for those of you, go Friars, says somebody from Providence, apparently. Most of you are probably looking at this game and you're thinking, well, I'll probably take the Derrick Henry piece and I'll move along. Or maybe you're just so intimidated by the game, you don't want the Derrick Henry piece because Ryan Tannehill's not going to play and you just don't know how things are going to flow. It's a low total, 35.5, but that's not as low as you think, because there's a lot of totals that are actually lower than this. Maybe you just want to stay away from all these games. But Mike, let me ask you 2 questions. Is Derrick Henry the only guy you like in this game? And has Derrick Henry's stock dropped or risen since the news of Ryan Tannehill, or has it just stayed where it would have been had Ryan Tannehill been the quarterback this week?
I think it's mostly staying the same, but it's still very high. Very, very high on Derrick Henry here. I love him this week. It's hard not to. He's absolutely crushed this team, no matter who's handing him the football. I like having Willis back there. He is going to at least be somewhat of a threat to run. I also like that we've seen Derrick Henry elevating his game in the passing game of late. I think that's going to be critical here. I expect to see a ton of RPO stuff, a ton of stuff that's going to give options for Derrick Henry. But most importantly for DFS, the touchdown equity is incredibly high. We still should see some wildcat from Derrick Henry in the red zone. Just all the touches, all the usage there. It's cold. It's nasty. It's a spot where Derrick Henry's difficult to tackle in any game. But in these conditions, he's really difficult to tackle. We saw it the other night a little bit with A.J. Dillon in the Packers game against the Rams when it's that cold. It's so hard to bring a guy down like that, especially a team that doesn't have a lot to play for in the Texans, right? They're not competing for anything really at this point. Business decisions might be made when it's that cold outside trying to tackle someone like Derrick Henry. I love Derrick Henry this week. It's hard not to.
Yeah, and we talked about him at length on the Tuesday pod, Mike. It was really hard to get, whether it's Tannehill or not, to your point. And you're right about, the run pass option, read option type stuff. That could create, even bigger lanes. We'll have to see. I'd like to see Malik Willis keep it on some of those, run pass options or read options, because I think if that legitimate threat is there early, I think that's going to create even bigger lanes for Derrick Henry as the first, second, third, fourth quarter transpire. But let me ask you, Malik Willis, is he, there's obviously cheap quarterbacks to take. I think Gardner Minshew is an obvious one at 4,800. Would you even consider pivoting to a Malik Willis in this case with this type of total? I assume the answer is no, but I feel like I have to ask.
Yeah, it's going to be no for me. There's just other better situations. One of them will be in the next game that we'll talk about. I just think it's a better situation. So Willis, yes, he could get there throwing touchdowns. Yes, he could bust one long. Yes, he could run one in. I'd rather just isolate Derrick Henry and move on here, though.
Okay, sounds good. That next game is the New York Giants plus 3.5 at the Vikings. It's a 48-point total. This game is going to be really interesting for a lot of people in terms of wanting to play this game. And there's obvious reasons. We've talked about it all season. The dome environments, whether it's good weather around the league or not, the dome environments are always better for scoring. And we have a situation here where we have a 48-point total, which is reflective of the good and optimal conditions. But we also have so many other games. The majority of games that people generally just don't want to touch because there's high wind, there's extremely cold temperatures, particularly when you factor in the wind chill. There's potential precipitation, which includes snow. This is a game that is perfectly curated in a dome. New York Giants plus 3.5 at the Vikings, 48-point total. I think this is a game where you could go on each side. And it seems to me, Mike, based on what you just said about maybe some low-cost quarterbacks in better situations than, let's say, Malik Willis, for example, is Daniel Jones that guy that you're referring to? And how do you like playing this game?
Yeah, I love this game. It's hard not to, especially this week. You mentioned the dome. We talk about it all the time. It's even more important in this particular week. It's also a spot where the teams want to keep winning. And there's records being chased on the Minnesota side with Justin Jefferson. But the Giants, they want to keep winning in this spot. It's a good spot for him. So, yes, Daniel Jones is one of those players here. Look, the range of outcomes here are incredibly wide. We've seen single-digit games in the win over Washington, 9 fantasy points. We've seen games of 30-plus fantasy points from him this year. I think we get somewhere, obviously, in the middle between those, but I think he's got 30-point upside here. We know the upside that he has rushing. I think he's still going to have 40 yards rushing in this game, potentially a rushing touchdown here, but should have all the opportunity because his own defense is going to get lit up in the passing game here. They're going to give up yards. They're going to give up points. We're almost guaranteed a trailing game script here for the Giants. He's 5,600. So, yes, I do like Daniel Jones.
So my question for the Daniel Jones roster construction is, I think you can justify playing him naked. I actually think you can justify playing him with Saquon Barkley because there are games where Saquon gets targets, not Eckler type targets, but targets nonetheless. And then, of course, Darius Slayton at 5,200, a guy that's going to be running the deep patterns against a Minnesota Vikings defense that can get exposed, particularly deep. But then you got Richie James and Isaiah Hodgins, 4,100, 3,900, Richie being the lower end of that at 3,900, Daniel Bellinger at 3,300. Who would you pair with Daniel Jones, or do you double stack it? And because of the value that you're creating, who do you bring back? Is it just one player, or do you just get super aggressive in this game and you think of maybe Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson, or KJ Osborne and Justin Jefferson, something like that?
Yeah, it'll be very aggressive in this game. Richie James, I'll have a ton of Richie James here. I think we see close to 10 targets for him in this particular game. Again, the pace of play, it's not going to necessarily be like the game against Washington. There's going to be more snaps offensively for them in this spot. I think they're going to be obviously trailing at times as well. So I like both of them, all three of them really. James first, then Hodgins, then Bellinger, but I'm going to have all of them. Saquon Barkley would be my fourth running back, probably only playing 4 running backs total this week across my 5 lineups. So Barkley will be in the player pool. Dalvin Cook is number 3. Love Dalvin Cook this week. Love Justin Jefferson on the other side. Love Kirk Cousins on the other side. This game is it's a classic stance. We know a lot of people are going to play it. I'm still going to take a pretty overweight stance on it personally and be more than the field here.
Yeah, I love it. And I'll just spoiler alert here, and I'm not going to give out the play, but I'll be on by the way, if you couldn't tell, I'm in a new environment right now. I'm in DC, so I'm not in my regular quarters, but I still will be on this show. I'll be on the Early Edge later tonight at 7:30 talking about Thursday Night Football, which, by the way, we had a question from Juan Crispin. This is time sensitive. Lawrence or Minshew in fantasy? It's going to be Minshew for me. Mike, I assume you agree that Minshew's probably going to have the better game than Trevor in tough conditions at the New York Jets tonight.
Yeah, Minshew by a pretty considerable margin, actually, for me.
I totally agree. I totally agree, Mike. And just to finish my thought, what I was getting at was tomorrow I'll be on the prop show, and I'm pretty sure one of my props. I usually give out 4 props on the prop show, and then I come Sunday on the final bets show on the Early Edge with the 5th prop. Prop stars and Dave Richard are on that show as well. Of course, Jonathan Coachman hosts it. One of my props will pertain to Dalvin Cook. So please tune in tomorrow at 4:00 to hear all of the props from everybody, including me, of course. Dalvin Cook should be featured in that one. And I do want to highlight, there was somebody who just made a really nice comment here. Everybody, if you're in here, some new people in here, Gardner for God, Joey Cassio, Tony Alanis. I see Anthony James. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Go ahead and retweet this if you're on Twitter. Whatever you want to do to promote the show or review it, that's great. But it was Joey Cassio. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Rare occurrence. I can watch live. Happy holidays, and thanks, Sia and Mike, for your work. Appreciate that. Appreciate the acknowledgement. You never need to thank us. We're happy to be here. Our thank you from you is you actually being in here. And I'm not just saying something cliche. It's legitimately true. Really, really appreciate everybody being in here. The only thing I want to share on the Dalvin Cook side, because I do like him, Mike, the Giants, if I didn't already say this, they're allowing over 5.3 yards per carry. And a lot of contact. I should say this: they're not getting contact early. So I think we have a situation where if Dalvin Cook finds a running lane, it can be go time for him. So it wouldn't shock me at all if he has a house call in this game. Vikings better against the run than the pass, but I do think Saquon can get loose in this one. I think the volume is going to be there for Saquon. So yeah, there's a lot of pieces in this game. Of those 2 running backs, Mike, I agree. It's Dalvin Cook for me. It's not Saquon Barkley if I had to rate them. Anybody else in this game? You didn't mention Darius Slayton when you were going over all the Giants. Is he in your player pool?
He's not currently, but I don't have an issue playing him. It's mostly a price point play. Up to 5,200, I'd much rather speculate on 3,900 and 42 or whatever they are. It's paying $1,000 more for Slayton, who I don't anticipate to really have a huge edge in terms of volume. I think the savings are needed based of my lineup core. So that's why Slayton did not make my player pool.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And it's Hodgins that's 4,100, and Richie James, the guy you like the most, is actually the least expensive guy at 3,900. The next games, so we like a lot of guys in this game, this Vikings game, but this next game, I don't think anybody's going to like a lot of guys. There's one guy I have my eye on, though. So it's the Saints plus 2.5 at the Browns. It's a 32.5 point total. This total has been flirting between 31 and 32.5. Wins are expected to be very high in this one, Mike, which you probably already know. It's going to be brutally cold. This is going to be one of the colder games on the slate. The only guy that I'd even consider, and he was sort of tagged with a foot injury earlier in the week, but I think he's practicing in full at this point. It's Nick Chubb. I think with Nick Chubb, it's one of those situations where people want to avoid the cold weather games. And if Nick Chubb's going to be super depressed ownership, I'd at least consider playing Nick Chubb in that case. And maybe, Mike, you can kind of pull up initial projections on Nick Chubb, but he's the only guy I'd consider outside of the Cleveland defense, which is 3,800. So that's a little too expensive, but I think the Saints defense on the other side, particularly if you're not playing Nick Chubb, is a decent defense at 2,800. There's other defenses I like, mind you, in that 2,800-ish range. Anything from this game for you, though?
I'll mention Chubb just because you did. The ownership, I'm talking 2 to 3% owned. I don't think anyone's playing him. I think everybody's going to play at least 2 running backs we're going to talk about today. We've already talked about one, being Derrick Henry. I can't get anywhere in this game other than defenses. The only place that I would like to, in the old days when we had Taysom Hill as a tight end, that would be my favorite play of the week. I think it's going to be a massive Taysom Hill game. If you want to speculate in a huge, you play 150 lineups, things like that, I don't hate playing Taysom Hill once in that particular spot. He's
Mhm.
4,800, the same price as Minshew. Um, a scenario where Taysom Hill has 70 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns is not unreasonable at all in this particular game. I expect it to be a Taysom Hill game personally. Um, Having said that, though, he's a quarterback, and I'm not going to play him as my quarterback in my 5 lineups. So I can't really get there, but it unfortunately really impacts the value of everyone else in the game. So it's by far one of the worst weather games of the week. It's a situation I'm going to be avoiding outside of the defenses.
Yeah, and again, when it comes to Chubb, listen, it's not a super quality play for me, but I am going to play some Nick Chubb. And it goes back to the Henry conversation, Mike, when you were talking about, what do these teams have to play for? Granted, Houston's been playing really well the last couple of weeks. At least, offensively, they've really kind of turned it up a notch a little bit. But I'm certain I didn't coin this term. I'm certain this has been coined by like 100 other people that think they were the first at it. But it's business decision December. I've been saying that for the last few weeks. Again, I don't think I own that one. If I do, that's great. But I'm sure 1,000 people have said that before I have. And I think when it comes to the brutal conditions, listen, if Nick Chubb gets 16 carries, there's going to be some of those where he gets to the second level, and those linebackers and defensive backs in that chill are just not going to want to make that business decision the wrong way. And I could see a situation where this 32.5 point total, that half of it gets gobbled up by Nick Chubb in these particular conditions.
I 100% agree, which reminds me of something I want to talk about defense and special teams this week. Look, all the defenses in the cold weather games are going to grab additional ownership. That's fine, but keep in mind that you remove some of the best part of and special teams when you're playing in the cold, sloppy game, right? We're talking everyone looks at a defense and wants to play them here because, this game's super low scoring, right? They're going to run the ball a ton. The clock's moving. They're probably going to punt a lot. That's great, right? However, how do you score points as a defense? Turning the ball over with interceptions typically and sacking the quarterback. The sack is the most underrated thing in DFS scoring here in terms of defenses. If they're not throwing the football as much, you eliminate the opportunity for turnovers and sacks pretty significantly. Not to mention you're adding additional ownership to them. So be careful when you're just jamming in the automatic game with 30 points in the total. Not always the best move in a week like this.
Yeah, that's incredible advice. Excellent advice. And speaking of games and maybe you could give me some insight here. This next game is pretty troubling conditions as well. And it's got some, high flyers with Justin Fields and Josh Allen, among others, of course. It's the Bills -8 at the Bears. It's only a 39.5 point total. That's certainly reflective of the weather. I don't really, let me ask you this, Mike. Do you have a lean on the weather, and is the weather getting you away from the players in this game?
It's cold. It's not, it's not the worst situation, but it's not the best. 20 miles an hour on the wind, 12, 15 degrees, wind chills it's going to be cold, right? It's not the worst of the situations. It's got 2 teams that are mostly, I can't say used to these conditions because it's hard to get used to this level, but they are teams that play in sloppy conditions outdoors very frequently. I'm not as worried about it in this particular spot. The issue for me is you've got typed on a rundown here, Cook or Singletary. Who knows, right? At this point. And then Josh Allen himself, he has the ability to run. On the other side, Justin Fields has the ability to run. It's really hard to get to anyone in this game. The only one, again, it's a 150 max only play. I'm not doing it in 5 lineups, but I love Stephon Diggs. If you can play 150 lineups, this is the week Diggs is going to be 2% owned or less. He's $8,500. It's so much easier to get a ton of other players in your lineup. But with 20-mile-an-hour winds, if they're not able to run the ball as well with the box stacked, Josh Allen is very comfortable throwing 8-yard passes all day long to Stephon Diggs if he has to. That's right. So on a site like Draftkings where it's full PPR, yes, he's expensive. Not unreasonable to think that Diggs can still manage 8 catches, maybe only 50 yards, but score 2 touchdowns in this game. Again, you can't do it in 5 lineups, or you shouldn't do it in 5 lineups. If you're someone who's max entering or playing a ton, I think it's a pretty good week to attack them.
Yeah, no, I agree. What about the idea of just playing Josh Allen naked, because again, and this kind of goes back to the Cook and Singletary thing a little bit, where is the rushing equity going to come from in a game like this? Does Josh Allen kind of morph into the Jalen Hurts role a little bit? And again, Josh Allen has been Jalen Hurts with the rushing, but he hasn't really been Jalen Hurts with the rushing this year. I wonder, is this a game where we see a little bit more of that from him?
I think it is. I think they also want to be extremely careful not to get him hurt at this point in this particular game as well. So, yeah, I mean, I do think that it's not going to matter. Josh Allen's going to do what he wants to a lot of the time, especially if you're giving him plays that are truly read plays where he has that decision. He's going to do whatever he wants to do at that point. I personally think he runs a lot, but I think that we see a relatively conservative game plan from them in general, if and when they are ahead and leading. It's truly get in, get out with a win. You've seen it reflected in the point spread here. This thing's down to 8. Early in the week it was 9.5, probably should be 10 plus. I think let's win this game. Let's stay healthy and get the heck out of there.
Yeah, when it comes to Cook and Singletary too, my lean, and I haven't really been on James Cook all year from a DFS standpoint. There were weeks where people were really hot on him, and it was reflective of the week before. They're like, oh, I guess, he's kind of been handed the keys, and that, you got to be careful on those 1 week sample size. And I'll say last week, Singletary outsnapped Cook pretty significantly, and he certainly outtouched him 16-7 when you combine the rushing and the actual complete receptions from each running back. But I do think this game could be a pop game. And again, I'm kind of going on feel here. I'm not going on last week and the week before, because if anything, Singletary would be the guy if you just examine the last couple of weeks. But I think this is a good spot to maybe speculate on James Cook at 500 less than Devin Singletary at 4,900. And it's not because, Mike, I think he's going to outtouch Singletary, and he might, by the way, but I doubt it. But I think even if he can get close to like a 40-60 split in this type of game environment, we know James Cook is way more likely to break one, whether it's the passing game or the running game, than Devin Singletary. So there's a lot of value on this slate, and we'll get to all of it, but I do think Cook might be a sneaky play. Is it the kind of guy that, if you're doing 5 lineups, he might sneak into 1 or 2 of them?
Not for me, but I play incredibly aggressively when I play. So like I've got 4 running backs total. The top 2 running backs that I have, I'm going to have them in 100% of lineups, no matter what.
Gotcha.
And I'll tell you, it's going to be Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey. They'll be in every lineup, no matter what.
Wow, so that's interesting, Mike. Because a lot of room. It certainly doesn't, because that's going off the top of my head here, 8,800 and 8,600. And it's funny because we had a lot of questions on Tuesday about Christian McCaffrey, about Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry was kind of the easy one to answer. Christian McCaffrey was the one that I considered, and I'm not looking at ownership right this second. We'll get to Christian McCaffrey, but I had kind of considered him more of a pivot off of Derrick Henry at lower ownership. And I don't know if that's actually going to be the case. I certainly think it should, given the matchups. But is that the case? Is he coming in at like half or less the ownership as Derrick Henry?
Unfortunately, no. He's coming in with more. Going to be, they're the top 2 owned players on the slate. I'm playing them. Like I said, I'm going over on a few of those spots this week.
All right. And so everybody pay attention, because Mike has already told you, we're about to get to a big time game in the Seahawks and the Chiefs, but Mike already told you some of the value plays he likes. So, I mean, I think you can kind of piece together, some of what Mike is going to have in one of his, or maybe almost all of his 5 lineups. So make sure you're listening closely here. With that said, we do want to move to the Seahawks plus 9.5 at the Chiefs, 49.5 point total. But before we go to that game, which is going to be exciting on a lot of different levels, DFS included, we are going to hear a message from our partners.
Huddle up, NFL fans. It's almost Xmas.
Merry Xmas. Nickelodeon and the NFL are teaming up
for the ultimate holiday gift.
The Nickelodeon NFL Xmas game.
I got 3 words for you: Broncos, Rams, and Santa.
Ho, ho, ho. This is going to be the best Christmas ever.
It's the Denver Broncos taking on the Los Angeles Rams in the Nickelodeon NFL Xmas game. Christmas Day at 4:30 Eastern, 1:30 Pacific. Only on Nickelodeon.
And we are back. My name is Nejad. This is the game-by-game preview. We are going to go through every single game of Saturday. We're going to touch a little bit on the Sunday 3-game slate. We're going to give out our top 3, or I should say Mike's top 3 at each position, our cheat sheets. If you're new in the chat, and there's a lot of you that are new here, Roy Steyer, maybe? Irakli, I'm not going to try to pronounce the last name because I probably screwed up the first name. Dave, Camden Williams, man, there's a lot of Derek. I see you. Everybody go ahead and smash that. Oh, there you go. Rade Pav, I believe that's how you pronounce it. Smash that like button that Rade is suggesting you do. Let's get on with it. And we appreciate all of you being in here, by the way. Seahawks plus 9.5 at the Chiefs, 49.5. Now, one thing I was concerned about on the front end of this week, Mike, was the weather. For all games, obviously, but this game was kind of included in that. And one sort of cheat code I was trying, and I'm not trying to be like, super, this isn't like a super novel concept, but one cheat code for me when I'm looking at the weather is also to look at the totals. Obviously, if the Seahawks Chiefs total had crashed from 49 or 49.5 to 45.5 or something, we would clearly have a problem with the weather. If anything, this total has gone up from Tuesday. I believe it was 49 or 48.5, and now it's 49.5. So to me, in this game, which has a lot of dynamic players and basically no secondaries, and what I mean by that is the Seahawks can't cover anybody and the Chiefs can't cover anybody. It doesn't seem like weather's an issue here. What say you?
Yeah, this one is fascinating. I think the weather is an issue. It doesn't seem like it's an issue because it's mild relative to everything else that's going on across. I don't love the game, honestly. It's still very, very cold. 20 degrees as a high. We're still double-digit winds. We're not talking 20-mile-per-hour winds. It's 10 to 15 at most, but it's still very, very cold. The thing that I worry about most here is just projecting where all the usage goes on the Kansas City side as the team gets a little more healthy here, and the price points, right? So I can't get to Mahomes because of the quarterback situation we have this week. We have one very, very obvious play, in my opinion. So I can't get to Mahomes. Because I can't get to Mahomes, yes, you can play McKinnon or Pacheco. McKinnon, I think, has been largely a product of just being in games that got overly competitive that they weren't necessarily expecting to be in. Now that some of the receiving group is back and healthy, they're playing at home where we expect them to play better. I think it's a really, really, really fragile situation. And of course, because I'm playing Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey in every single lineup, it's going to be difficult for me to get to plays like that. So it sounds absolutely insane, but I have 0 players in this game currently.
Wow. Okay. So and that makes sense, by the way, given what you've already told us in terms of how you're constructing your lineups. Let me ask you this, though. Let's assume you're not doing Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey lineups. Let's assume maybe you're grabbing one of those guys and you're moving along with some value here and there. If you were playing Mahomes, couldn't I say, based on the last couple of weeks, and by the way, last week, I believe he was 36 for 41, had over 300 yards. He's averaging over 320 yards, I believe. I think that's his average passing yards on the season. He gets to face Seattle, but you're right. We've always kind of wondered, outside of Kelsey, which receiver is going to get the bulk of this work. But over the last 2 weeks, Juju Smith-Schuster has 21 targets and he's caught 19 of them. The efficiency that is there, the targets are there, and even with guys like McClure Hardman coming back, I don't really see. And we know what MVS is at this point. We kind of know what Sky Moore is at this point, at least in terms of how he's going to impact this particular year. It seems to me that if you did a Mahomes stack with Juju, if you were going to stack this game, I feel like you'd be in pretty good shape, and you're getting, I guess, some value out of Juju. Maybe you could stack him with Kelsey as well, or maybe go with McKinnon and hope he has another spike game. But to me, Juju seems a little bit more reliable now than maybe he did this entire season. Am I wrong about that? And once you answer that, on the Seattle side, if you were to play this game, is it the Marquise Goodwin value? Do you just go right to DK Metcalf? And how do you feel about Geno Smith?
Yeah, I can't get to Geno just because of the price point and some of the other quarterbacks out there. I could see going up to Mahomes if you didn't want to play McCaffrey and Henry, or only play one of the two. I could get to that. It's a fantastic matchup for Travis Kelce. I get that. Seahawks are the worst team in the league against the tight end. The thing that I worry about is seriously just limited possessions, right? I think that Seattle is going to be able to move the ball against Kansas City and eat clock. They do it all the time. Kansas City, we know, is going to be able to move the ball and eat clock. They do it all the time. We see Patrick Mahomes take up half a quarter very, very, very frequently, especially when they get to play at home like this. So I know that Hardman is not back. Juju is fine. Like, I think that they're fine plays. I just, for whatever reason, I wish that the game were in a dome and I would be way more excited about it. I don't think that it's that great of a spot being that cold with some wind there. It's still a very, very, very uncomfortable situation. I'm just going to make a hard stance personally. So I don't think they're bad plays by any means. I've just chosen where.
Yeah, and before we move on from this game, is there maybe a running back like Kenneth Walker that if you think this game plan is going well, first of all, is a lot of ownership going to this game? Are we seeing a lot? Because there's only like 3 games that have high totals. Because I do think it's a really good contrarian play to completely fade this game if a lot of people are going to be excited about it. But then again, you always have the problem of Patrick Mahomes and who you're going to stack him with and things of that nature. I would imagine guys like Geno Smith and DK Metcalf are getting a lot of ownership, and it wouldn't shock me if Marquise Goodwin, as the week goes, starts to get a lot of ownership too. Is that actually happening, or are people kind of thinking like you, like, I'm not so sure about this one?
No, they're definitely getting ownership. DK Metcalf is essentially drawing the same ownership as Justin Jefferson right now. Obviously, it's silly to compare those two when Justin Jefferson is $2,200 more expensive. So it makes sense. Justin Jefferson at $9,300 still being a top 5 owned player is pretty crazy, right? DK Metcalf is the number 6 owned player for me currently. In terms of projected ownership, not in my exposures, but I'm projecting him around 20% owned. Juju Smith-Schuster about 15%, Kenneth Walker 12 to 15. Let's see, Marquise Goodwin around 10% right there with Isaiah Pacheco. So those guys are not popular, but not single digits either. DK Metcalf definitely popular.
Yeah, makes sense. Certainly makes sense. I'm going to be probably. I might end up stacking this game on the Kansas City side, just so everybody knows. And I'll probably, even when I'm not stacking this game with a quarterback, I'll probably skinny stack it with maybe a value play on Marquise Goodwin and just hope he can assume that Tyler Lockett will. And I do, again, like I said on Tuesday, I do think Marquise Goodwin has become a better receiver. I don't think he's just a deep play threat at this point. I think if you're stacking this game, I think guys like Noah Fant are in play, but a skinny stack with somebody like Goodwin and Schuster, or even Goodwin and Kelsey, I think those are in play. But to Mike's point, listen, you can go a lot of different places. And since a lot of people are going to be living in this game, it might be a good idea to get away from it this week. I totally get it. I'm just worried that Mahomes can just kind of do whatever he wants to. And so that's kind of the worry I have. But again, there's a lot of other games that are very interesting. The next game we're going to talk about is not one of them. So we're going to be really quick about it. It's the Bengals -3 at the Patriots. It's a 41.5 point total. Not much to say about this game, Mike. I'm not really interested much on the Cincinnati side for once. I don't think the Patriots defense is necessarily super formidable, not the defense we thought they were maybe a month ago. But I think just with weather and the Patriots playing at home, I'm not really interested in paying $8,300 for Jamar Chase or even $7K for T. Higgins. I think it's a pretty decent contrarian play if the weather cooperates a little bit to stack Burrow. But I'm not on anybody in this game, including the running backs. How about you?
Yeah, I'm off for this one for now. I will say the only one that caught a little bit of attention was T. Higgins, only because I'm projecting him 2% owned. At $7K, 2% owned, very reasonable for him to have enough garbage time to get there. I say garbage time because I'm not sure they're winning this game, honestly. Sounds a lot like crazy. They should not have won against Tampa Bay last week. They lucked into 4 turnovers in 9 plays. The Bucs somehow turned the ball over literally 4 turnovers in 9 plays. Not sure how it happened. That's setting amazing. Them up. I mean, they were literally dropped snaps, right? They weren't it's absolutely incredible. They were in trouble in that game, down 17-0. They were gifted points. Now this is a much tougher place to go play. It's going to be cold, not anywhere near like the other games. But the pass rush from the Pats is legit. That's the only thing that they've got going that's actually legit. I think it could be a little bit of a letdown spot for Cincy. So, if you want to play T. Higgins, go for it. But I'm out on this game.
Yeah. Speaking of Tom Brady, by the way, he's on that 3-game slate that we're going to touch on at the very end of the show. And he gets Arizona this could be another Tom Brady week. So stay tuned for that. I can't wait to hear your thoughts, Mike, on that. And I saw a comment here, Stephen Bowman, first time, long time, he says. Well, welcome, buddy. Really appreciate it. Okay, so let's move on. Another game. We'll get to a couple. There's certainly another huge game we're about to get to, but let's just touch on Lions Panthers real quick because it's on the slate, right? So Lions -3 at the Panthers. It's a 44-point total, 43.5 in some places. I'm not really interested in much here. I'm not paying $7,800 for Amon-Ra St. Brown, particularly on the road against a Carolina defense that isn't terrible. The Carolina side, I mean, if you want to play DJ Moore or, Terrace Marshall or Shi Smith, feel free. I'm definitely not going to do that. And the problem is, I don't know who to play at the running back position because Foreman has sort of taken a back seat. Chuba Hubbard has certainly gotten some work. So I think you could consider Chuba Hubbard, but Detroit run defense has been playing a little bit better over the last month. And then Raheem Blackshear gets some snaps as well. So the wide receiver core for Detroit, it's so diversified beyond Amon-Ra St. Brown that I don't want to pick and choose between DJ Chark and Josh Reynolds and Jameson Williams or tight end Brock Wright or even Khalif Raymond, who's been getting some looks. I'm just off this game, Mike. Anybody you like?
Honestly, no. So far, we'll get to it on the cheat sheet, but yeah, no, I'm not playing this game.
Love it. Okay, so let's move on because we don't want to waste anybody's time. Good news for me playing against Burrow in season long, says Rade. Okay, well, hopefully our analysis is right on that. Hopefully that is good news for you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for commenting. Atlanta at the Baltimore Ravens. The Falcons showcasing their rookie Desmond Ridder. They're +7.5 at the Ravens, 37.5 point total. I'll just note that the Ravens defense is 3,200. It's a pretty good defense. And to the extent they're not a good defense, I don't know that Desmond Ridder is going to be able to expose that back end. So, by the way, in case you didn't know, Ridder was 13 for 26 last week for 97 total passing yards, 38 rushing yards. Before you laugh and point and make fun of him, that's basically Mariota's stat line too. So it's just kind of one of those things. Don't forget he doesn't have Kyle Pitts. Yes, Drake London probably got a pretty good target share last week, but they just don't pass it a ton. The one guy I like here, Mike, and then I'll kick it to you, J.K. Dobbins. I mean, the last two games, he hasn't gotten a ton of work. I mean, you're talking about 13, 14 carries a game, but he's had 28 rush attempts over the last 2 weeks for a grand total of 245 rushing yards. His efficiency is completely off the charts, averaging 8 to 9 yards per carry over the last 2 weeks. And I don't really see how that efficiency goes down much. Of course, it'll go down a little bit because that's insane. But against the Falcons, I mean, is J.K. Dobbins fully in play here, or is this a move-on spot for you?
He's definitely in play. He's in my player pool at this point. I like him. I would pair him with the defense if you're going to play him. Just stack it up. Ravens defense and J.K. Dobbins. I think it's a great play. I'm mostly electing to play him in the player prop market. I like his rushing total. I like his longest rush as well. That's really where the bulk of his value has come, is through having 1 to 2 really long rushes in the game. I think we see that again from him. So yeah, that's how I'm going to handle it, but not playing anybody on the Falcons side.
Yeah, and that's, if I'm playing anybody, it's J.K. Dobbins, it's the Ravens defense, and that's a wrap. So let's go to the Commanders. The Commanders +7
Actually,
at the 49ers.
I'd be doing a disservice if I didn't mention Drake London, though.
Okay.
If for some reason you love Dobbins, Drake London has seen a ton of targets the last 2 weeks. 23 targets the last 2 weeks, which is a lot considering he didn't really have that many in the last 6 weeks combined. Just worth pointing out. I don't think he's going to play him still. Hard to argue with the target volume. I mean, he still had 11 targets in Ritter's debut, 70 yards. Obviously didn't score a touchdown, but 11 targets from the rookie, playing with the rookie again. You gotta acknowledge it, I think.
No, I think you're right. And maybe I did a disservice to Drake London when I was rattling off, the Desmond Ridder, because now that I mention it, 26 pass attempts isn't bad. It's just the 97 yards that's really catching my eye. I wonder what the ceiling is for Drake London. But then again,
he had 70 of his 97 yards.
Yeah. So that's so interesting, right? He literally that's crazy. 70% of the yards in passing went to Drake London. So, I think that's another game to maybe monitor the weather. If the wind is down, I do like that skinny stack, Drake London and J.K. Dobbins. Again, Drake London at 4,800. I think that's why he enters the conversation. Yeah. Mike, if he's 5,800 or 5,600, it's kind of okay, no thank you, obviously, right?
Yep.
All right, so let's move on to the Commanders +7 at the 49ers, 38.5-point total. Man, tough spot for Washington. I mean, just they kind of got the game sort of taken away from them a little bit. Not that they necessarily would have won the game, but so they're kind of down on their luck. They lost to the Giants, and then they get to fly to San Francisco and play the best defense in the league. And I don't see how they come out on top in this one. I'm not sure I see how they cover in this one, but it's CMC all day here. And I think we saw last week with the 49ers, they're just going to run CMC between the tackles, on the outside. They're going to pass to him a little bit, even though his passing production kind of went down after the first quarter last week. I understand the CMC play. I actually don't understand how it's that well owned. In other words, I really thought he'd be somewhat of a pivot off of Derrick Henry because of his price and because we still see Washington as a somewhat formidable defense, particularly against the run. But again, we know CMC gets the volume kind of regardless here. So is it CMC and move on for you, or are there players maybe on the Commander side that you like? I mean, I'll note that Jahan Dotson, I believe he was 3,900. I don't know that I'm personally willing to go there, but I think it's, decent speculative value. I'm not playing Antonio Gibson or Brian Robinson in this particular game. Nobody I really like here other than CMC.
Yeah, it's CMC or bust for me here. I think he's going to have a ton of work in this game. Double-digit targets, I think, for sure, especially the way Washington's going to be able to get after him with Chase Young out there. I think it's a great spot for him. I think we also have to mention the Chris McCaffrey Pro Bowl snub just a little bit. The fans voted him in. The people who didn't were the coaches and players.
Wow.
That does not sit well with a player like that. I think that, there's only so much you can do, but the one position that you can do something about it when you're a running back touching, or any player, but when you're someone like this who's going to touch the ball legitimately 30 times in this game, you can play a little harder at certain times, right? I think it's an absolutely smash spot for Christian McCaffrey. I think he's going to get all the usage. I think his teammates that he plays with individually are going to want to get him in the end zone if they have opportunities as well. I just think it's a great spot for him. And he's, yes, he's expensive. It's doable this week. It's give the ball to Christian McCaffrey and let him go win football games for you.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because Kyle Shanahan's the type of coach that will listen to that stuff and will kind of honor any implicit request to maybe get a little bit more work or a little bit more goal line work because of the snub. He's just that type of personality. And that's not me like criticizing Kyle Shanahan at all. For the record, I've talked on the Early Edge a couple of weeks ago about how I thought he's the best coach in the league. I've always thought that. I've thought that for many years, really since he was in Atlanta. So even though he was an OC there, but the point is, I think you're right about that. I think I'll be a little underweight, certainly relative to you, I'll be underweight, but I think relative to the field, I'll be a little underweight on Christian McCaffrey. I'll probably go to other places, other kind of not speculative, but other running backs that are kind of in the 7K, maybe 6K, 5K range. But I absolutely understand the Christian McCaffrey play. No problem there. And I think we're willing to kind of move on from this game, right? It's Christian McCaffrey and then go, right?
Yeah, I can't get to anything else in the.
Okay, so let's get to the game that a lot of people are going to be talking about for a lot of different reasons. This is actually the last game of the 10-game slate. Again, we're going to do the top three at each position. By the way, I don't know if we're at 100 likes, but we usually get to 100 likes and then we share Mike's top three at each position. Try to get that. I mean, spoiler alert, we're going to give it to you anyway. But if you haven't already hit the like button, there's a lot of new people in here. I see you, Jeff and OS, Grey Goose Hayes. I see you in here, Garrett. Appreciate you, Faustino, being in here. Please hit the like button. Once we're done with this, we're going to do the cheat sheet, our top three, but then we're also going to touch on the Sunday slate. So stay tuned for that. But this Philly-Dallas game is so interesting. Eagles plus 4.5 at the Cowboys. This total has been kind of teetering around 46, 47, 47.5. Right now, I believe it's at 46. We know there's no Jalen Hurts at this point. It's going to be the Gardner Minshew show. He's 4,800. Certainly screams value to me, Mike. I think he screams value to a lot of people. I wonder if he screams value to you. Well, my question for you is, okay, first of all, do you like Gardner Minshew? The second question is, well, how do you like to play Gardner Minshew? Is it with A.J. Brown? Is it with Dallas? You mentioned Chase Young coming back for Washington. Great news for them. Dallas Goedert coming back for the Philadelphia Eagles. Clearly great news for them. Probably a nice little safety blanket for Gardner Minshew. With that said, I kind of like the A.J. Brown stack. I think maybe Devontae Smith is in play, but it's probably between the two receivers. It's A.J. Brown for me. It's the other side that I'm really curious about. I like CeeDee Lamb in this game. Not so much Gallup. Noah Brown, I think, is an interesting speculative play. I think it could be a Pollard pop game through the pass and through the running. So for me, it's Minshew, it's AJ Brown, maybe Goddard, and it's CeeDee Lamb on the other side and maybe Pollard. How do you play this game?
Yeah, it's a lot of Gardner Minshew. Probably going to have Minshew in 4 out of 5 lineups. Love him in this spot. He's simply too cheap. Best spot he's ever had in his entire career. Playing in a dome, a lot easier to have timing with receivers when there are moments. Love this spot for him. So I like pairing him with AJ Brown. I'm going to pair him with Dallas Goedert a little bit. It is Goddard's return. It is highly speculative. Dallas on paper rates well against tight ends. I'm not sure it's true. You look at Dallas's schedule; they don't play a ton of great tight ends to begin with. And they gave up a ton to Evan Ingram last week as a tight end. I like the spot for Goddard, though. I think he can come in here and be relevant when you have a quarterback like this. Making this start, you're going to look for some of these shorter throws over the middle of the field. That's where I expect Goddard to be relevant. So I like him a ton. You could still play Devontae Smith. I obviously love AJ Brown. As far as the other side, the one play that I will make in a tournament, I like CeeDee Lamb as well. I think CeeDee Lamb is like maybe the best pivot on the slate, and Jefferson. Someone that could theoretically give you the same upside with reduced ownership and reduced costs. So I do like that. But I actually like Zeke. As crazy as that sounds, I like Zeke Elliott. And I want you to look at Zeke's box. It's just absolutely crazy. And it's probably infuriating if you like someone like Tony Pollard, right?
Right.
Look at his box score. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games in a row with at least 15 DraftKings points. He's touching the ball 15 to 18 times every single game in the run game. He's getting multiple targets in the passing game. He scored at least 1 touchdown in every single one of those games, 2 of them with 2 games with 2 touchdowns. He gets carries because Jerry Jones loves the guy, and it's a mandate the guy is going to touch the football, right?
It's so true, by the way. Like that's like an actual thing. That's not you just being like cute with your language. Right. That is a thing, and it's very clear.
It is a very real thing. Look, he's a middling price point. No one's going to want to play him. We're all focused on the other side. You typically aren't using that kind of a play as a bring back. You're looking to find pass catchers as a bring back. If Minshew struggles at all in this game, we might see a turnover. We might see a short field. When they have short fields, Zeke gets the ball. Coming off of turnovers, Zeke gets the football. I don't think anyone's going to play him. So I don't mind playing Zeke Elliott here in this spot.
Yeah, I think my pushback on Zeke Elliott, and I agree with you in terms of the box scores. I wonder, I don't think it's going to go dry, to your point. But I do think with Dallas getting Jordan Davis back a few weeks ago, the stuff that Zeke does well, like just between the tackles, I don't think is going to be there as much as it has been over the last few weeks. And I do think just from a game planning standpoint, you're going to see maybe a little bit more design for Tony Pollard, maybe to help Dak get going too in the passing game, because he's been kind of up and down in the passing game, as we've seen for 3 weeks in a row now from an efficiency standpoint. So I could see a situation where you get some Pollard on the edge, whether it's through the passing game or the rushing game, and you finally have that. I say finally, like, first time in maybe 4 weeks or so where you get that spike game from Tony Pollard. It is speculative considering that these two, what I'm saying is Zeke and Tony Pollard, they legit split snaps. They split everything. It's just one of those things. So if you're looking for a Pollard spike week, you have to understand that you're probably at best getting 55% of the touches of the snaps relative to Ezekiel Elliott. But I do like CeeDee Lamb, and there's a guy in the chat named Dave. Dave, hopefully you've already hit the like button. We're almost at 100, and we have like way over twice as many watching. We're like 200 people watching. We only got 90 likes. Let's get to 100 real quick. We're about to do Mike's top 3, but you have a really astute comment here, Dave, and it's the boys are vulnerable to, you say the boys, but I want to say the Eagles are actually vulnerable to wide receivers, slot wide receivers as well. And CeeDee Lamb, for those of you that don't know, he kind of moves around the formation quite a bit. He's a boundary receiver, but he also plays in the slot about half the time. Same could be said for Noah Brown, not so much Michael Gallup, which is why if I'm going to speculate on a low-end Cowboys receiver, which I'm not 100% sure I'm going to do, it's probably going to be Noah Brown, who got a lot of work last week, and it's going to be CeeDee Lamb for sure. So I like that call. CeeDee Lamb, kind of an adjustment off of Justin Jefferson in terms of a discount and from an ownership and price standpoint. So I do like CeeDee Lamb. Anybody else from this game that you like? I mean, we kind of talked about everybody, but is there anybody else in play here? We didn't mention Devontae Smith. He's not on my radar this particular game. And let me ask you this. You're playing a lot of Minshew. Are any of those lineups Minshew naked?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. I think it's difficult to really go pinpoint exactly where he's going to go and have the most comfort and chemistry. Like, it's very possible that it's AJ Brown. It's a great weapon to try and throw to, right? Very possible it's Dallas Goedert. It's very possible it's Devontae Smith. It's also possible that it's Quez Watkins in the slot. Dallas is susceptible to slot receivers. Quez Watkins is playing there. Not sure Pascal if he's going to be available or not, but guys like Quez Watkins and Pascal might have a little more chemistry with Gardner Minshew as they spent time as number 3 and 4 receivers. Those guys typically work a little bit more with some of the backup quarterbacks. So always something to monitor, but at the price point at 4,800, while we typically like a stack and it's one of the best game environments on the slate, I don't think a stack is required with Gardner Minshew at that price point.
Okay. Absolutely love it. And I 100% agree. And I'll certainly have some lineups with Gardner Minshew as well. And obviously, go ahead, Mike.
I was just saying, and what I mean by that is not a direct handcuff, right? So like, say you don't quite have the money for AJ Brown or you don't love it, but we love CeeDee Lamb. There's nothing wrong with pairing Gardner Minshew and CeeDee Lamb instead of Gardner Minshew and AJ Brown, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Totally 100% agree. Mike, we're at 100 likes. You know what that means, right?
Let's go.
Let's go. So let's do it. We're going to do Mike's top. That, by the way, that's the 10-game slate. So pretty good timing on the likes, but we're going to do Mike's top 3 at each position. We're going to race through my cheat sheet, Mike's cheat sheet, and then we're going to just talk a few minutes before we get out of here regarding the Sunday slate and maybe how Mike thinks Showdown's going to go. So we got a lot to do in about, 10, 12 minutes. Mike, give me your top 3 at each position, starting at the quarterback.
Gardner Minshew, number 1, by a considerable margin. He's simply too cheap. No quarterback that's starting in this offense should be $4,800, period. Daniel Jones, number 2. Love the rushing upside. Love what I predict to be a guaranteed negative game script in terms of like a trailing game script. They're going to be playing up. He also has massive upside rushing the football with his legs, even more so in that garbage time. Kirk Cousins is number 3 for me. I expect this game to be an absolute shootout. I don't think the Giants can stop them. They're chasing records with Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson does a lot of things to bail out Kirk Cousins week after week. He's going to do it again here in this particular spot. Running backs, Derrick Henry, number 1. Number 2, Christian McCaffrey. Number 3, Dalvin Cook. Love that Minnesota game if you haven't figured that out yet. Love that game. Going to have that thing stacked up like crazy. Wide receiver, Justin Jefferson, Richie James, Isaiah Hodgins. All in the same game. Love that game. Playing the Giants wide receivers. Richie James, I think, is going to have 10 targets in this game. I think he's going to get peppered with targets in this trailing game script. I think the Vikings are going to give up enough and let them back into this football game. Love that spot. Tight end, Dallas Goedert is number 1 for me. I'm really speculative here in this spot. However, I do like it. I don't think a lot of people are going to play him. Single-digit ownership for sure. $4,500. I think Minshew's going to target the tight end here. I think it's someone that he trusts. Number 2, TJ Hawkinson. Number 3, Daniel Bellinger. Bellinger's dropped several passes. However, I think he's got a great opportunity here against Minnesota. I'm looking to stack up Daniel Jones pass catchers as much as I possibly can.
And Mike, I hate to put you on the spot here, but I actually forgot to include the defenses when I broke this down for you. Do you have a top 3 defenses or maybe even just a top defense that you know you're going to be playing a decent amount of?
Right now, the top 3, we've got Saints, Bears, and Texans.
Okay. And I'll just throw in, and I like the Saints quite a bit. The Texans, not like, so for me, I'm going to be playing what's that?
I said, yeah, the Texans are against Henry, and then right below them are the Ravens.
I was going to say, for me, if I just gave a top 2 out on defense, it would be the Saints and the Ravens, with Ravens probably occupying the number 1 spot. Mark, thank you for reminding me about those defenses. So let's do the cheat sheets real quick. And by the way, when I mentioned that I'm going to be underweight on Christian McCaffrey, I will be, and it's because of Dalvin Cook. So I'm going to have a lot of lineups that trot out Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook, the savings from Christian McCaffrey to Dalvin Cook. And I understand that can go badly for me, but it's a $1,600 difference. I like that game environment. I like what the Giants do against running backs, which isn't very good, isn't much. So it's going to be, Dalvin's going to be sort of the pivot off of Christian McCaffrey for me. Here's my cheat sheet. It's Gardner Minshew at 4,800 to AJ Brown at 8,100. My chalk play is going to be Derrick Henry. We've talked about him. We don't need to talk about him any longer. Value play is going to be Marquise Goodwin. I am going to get pieces of that game, unlike Mike. So Marquise Goodwin kind of taking that Tyler Lockett spot at 4,300. I do like my contrarian play is going to be Dalton Schultz. I am going to be getting a lot of pieces of this Eagles-Cowboys game, and I think Dalton Schultz is on the outside looking in, particularly because of how he performed last week. Just absolutely ice cold. He's only 4,200. I just think he's a guy that could still be the guy, regardless of the matchup, that gets 6 or 7 catches and ends up with 55 yards and a touchdown. I just think that's always in play for him. My fade is, and I mentioned this at the front end, is going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown at 7,800. I don't think that should surprise anybody. If you want to play him, he's going to get the volume. I mean, he's going to get some short area catches. We'll see what he turns them into. But for me, he's just not going to make my player pool. Mike, your cheat sheet.
Cheat sheet coming up. Look, it's boring. We have the same quarterback, Gardner Minshew. I want to highlight how great of a value he is this week in a controlled environment. We're going Gardner Minshew to Dallas Goedert. Again, highly speculative. I think that a tight end in this particular situation is the quarterback's best friend. Love Dallas Goedert here, 4,500. Chalk play, Christian McCaffrey. He is going to be popular. I love Derrick Henry. Not going to copy you on the Derrick Henry chalk play. Love them both. I'm playing them both. I think you should too. Value play, Richie James, 3,900. Love this spot for him. I think he's the one who gets the targets here from Daniel Jones. I think he's also sneaky quick and has some upside in open field against a Minnesota team that really isn't all that good in those situations. Contrarian play, I'm going to go Ezekiel Elliott here, 6K. Look, I don't think anyone's going to play him. However, I know that he has something in his contract that says you must touch the football. And it's going to continue to happen here. I think we're going to see opportunities for him. And I will say I've ragged on Zeke quite a bit throughout the season. In the last 5 weeks, he's got multiple games where his longest rush was over 20 yards. That's still encouraging to see. So as much as I've ragged on him and as much as I love Tony Pollard, I'm going to play a little bit of Zeke this week. And then my fade, DJ Moore. I'm not planning to play him at all. Don't love the spot at all. I think the Lions defense is improving. He's projected to be the 6th or 7th highest owned player on the entire slate. Makes sense. He's only 5,500, but I cannot get there personally.
Yeah, I'll join you on that fade. So let's touch on the 3-game slate on Sunday, because we didn't really touch on it too much on Tuesday when I was doing the solo pod. By the way, for everybody that's a new listener, I don't think I've seen Pig Boss 77 Boudreaux before in 215 Eagles. So maybe some of you are new. We do our shows Tuesday. It's the solo pod where we recap our lineups from the last week, but we also take an early look at stacking, at pricing, at roster construction. That's Tuesday at 5 o'clock. Then the Thursday show is always me and Mike going over this game by game preview. So real quick, Mike, we have this Sunday slate, and there's 2 games that are intriguing to me. Obviously, everybody's going to want a piece of this Green Bay-Miami game. I think the Miami players are really priced pretty soft, from Tua to Raheem Mostert. We got to kind of monitor Jeff Wilson when we talk about Mostert, but even Jalen Waddle at 7,200, Tyreek Hill 9,100. That's obviously pretty expensive, but I think there's value there, especially if you start your lineup with Tua. On the other side, there's guys like Christian Watson that I think people will be all over. Maybe Romeo Doubs at 4,800. I think Alan Lazard is on the outside looking in, which makes him intriguing to me. Aaron Jones, 6,900. That's pretty good value on this slate, I suppose. The Denver Rams game, I don't think people are going to want to play that game too much, and I totally get it. It's the Tampa Bay Arizona game that really intrigues me. Maybe a pivot off of the Tua stacks is that Tom, and maybe some people are going to be doing this. So it's not like some major contrarian play on a 3-game slate. But I think the Brady to Evans, or preferably Brady to Godwin stacks, are very much in play, just like they were in play last week. And I think you can run it back with a couple of guys from Arizona, including guys like James Conner, who was 100 less than he was last week at 6,800. How do you like this game? Like, where are your pieces coming from? And are you going super contrarian and just getting off of the Miami game? I can't imagine you're getting off it completely, but are you getting off of it from a stack standpoint?
Yeah, from a stack standpoint, I'm not going to be heavily stacking that game. It's very clearly Tom Brady stacks once again. I like this spot for him, just like I liked him last week. And last week he had a great game. You remove the 4 turnovers and he scores 30 fantasy points pretty easily, right?
Yeah.
312 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, threw the ball 44 times. I think he's going to have a great game here in this particular spot at 6,100. I'm probably going to end up stacking him with both Evans and Godwin. Love them both. Love Godwin. I think the floors are just incredibly high here. So, if you want to play James Conner, I think it's fine. I think that you're probably mostly playing James Conner. You can make the case for Rachaad White if you want to really triple stack this up. Play Rachaad White with 2 pass catchers and Tom Brady. That's projecting pretty well, everything I'm running through right here. So a lot of Tom Brady.
I see Chargy65 in here. He says, hit on your Brady stack last week. Of course, that's Mike's Brady stack. Man, at halftime of that game, Mike, it was looking like if you had a Brady stack, you were basically, I mean, don't get me wrong, it still paid off. Like Brady to Godwin was still a good stack, but the way it was looking at halftime was like, oh my gosh, this is, we've got some outrights in order from the Fantasy Football Today DFS squad, including, of course, Mike McClure. And it was those freak turnovers, Mike. I mean, first of all, they played poorly in the second half. Even without the turnovers, they played a little poorly. Cincinnati stepped it up. They schemed a little bit better, but you don't have those turnovers. You get maybe 1 or 2 more touchdowns. Like they were on a roll. That could have been a huge game. So I don't see a reason not to go back there.
Yeah, no, I think they played incredibly well for that half. And then, like I said, 4 turnovers on 9 plays, very deflating after you have the second one, in 3 plays. All like dropped fumbles, things like that really weren't supposed to be turnovers necessarily. So yeah, I'm all in on the Bucs on this 3-game slate for sure.
Yeah, Rade, your Daniel Jones versus Purdy question. Go Daniel Jones there. And Russell Gage from Townos to 11. Russell Gage, you could throw into a stack on a 3-game slate. He was pretty productive last week, right, Mike?
Yeah, no, pretty productive indeed. I think that where you're going to play him and where I think he'd be a great pivot on this individual slate is someone like Tutu Atwell, who I actually like Tutu Atwell. He dropped a touchdown in the last game, gets to play in a controlled environment here, much better spot overall. Having said that, Russell Gage, is not going to have near the ownership that Tutu Atwell will on this slate. So that's where I would want to use him in a pivot situation there.
On that Broncos-Rams game, which is only a 36.5 point total, Denver favored by 3. Guys like Tutu Atwell at 3,500 certainly makes sense. Does Tyler Higbee also make sense given the quarterback situation at 3,200? And would you be touching anybody else in that game? I mean, the running backs, I don't know that I would get to Cam Akers at 5,200. I don't like the running backs on the other side of the ball either. I don't know that I'm playing Jerry Jeudy at 5,800. Anything in that game other than Tutu Atwell?
I could see getting to Higbee. I think Greg Dulcich will still be popular, even though we've seen the quarterback change, didn't materialize really to anything. He just is projecting well again. I think a lot of people will still like him and just grab onto that upside that they've seen. So I do like pivoting away from Dulcich on to Tyler Higbee. Other guys in the game, like I think Cam Akers is okay. I think that they'll use him a little more in the passing game. The price point is certainly attractive. At 5,200 on a 3-game slate, he's like the 8th most expensive running back. Yeah, he's the 8th or 9th most expensive running back on a 3-game slate. Obviously a couple of them have questionable tags with Aaron Jones, Latavius Murray, Wilson. I like Cam Akers a lot here.
And one thing to keep in mind, this is just like last Saturday. Again, these 3 games are on Sunday, but keep late swap in mind. Keep in mind that it's a 3-game slate. Getting different with your roster construction, getting unconventional. Maybe you can do things that you wouldn't ordinarily do from a correlation standpoint. But we can't leave the 3-game slate without at least addressing the Miami Dolphins and the Green Bay Packers. If you were going to play that game, is it a Tua stack? Is it an Aaron Rodgers stack? And would you go ultra aggressive here to maybe try to get different, or is that where the field is going anyway?
I don't think the field's going to go there anyway. I think the field's going to play Tom Brady and then sprinkle pieces personally, just because of the pricing. I'll play Tyreek Hill. I'll have Tyreek Hill in 100% of these lineups on the 3-game slate. But more likely to stack Rodgers' side with 1 or 2 of his pass catchers. But it's mostly going to be Tom Brady for me and then sprinkling pieces in. But Tyreek will be my highest owned player that's not a quarterback.
And if Jeff Wilson isn't playing, is Raheem Mostert an auto play? And if Jeff Wilson is playing, do you avoid both of those backs?
I'll probably avoid both just because Miami doesn't want to run the ball, even though that's what they should do in this spot. They're still going to throw. They've got Tua. They've got the weapons, right? So if they're both active, I'm probably going to play guys like Cam Akers on this slate. Going to play a little Rachaad White, maybe some Latavius Murray. That's where I'm at on that. I'll mention I like the Packers. They're one of my favorite bets of the week. Bet them on Tuesday, +5, down to 3.5 now at this point.
Wow.
I think it makes sense. I don't think Miami's healthy. A week and a half ago, I bet Miami to miss the playoffs at plus 300. That's where I think this team is headed personally. So we'll see if we're right or not, but that is the reason why I don't have Tua stacks here in this particular spot.
And speaking of injuries, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention part of the reason we like Gardner Minshew so much is because on the Dallas side of the defense, there's a lot of injuries there too. So Gardner Minshew gets a really good matchup in terms of the conditions, but also the injuries that Dallas has as well. They still have a couple key pieces, but again, it just goes back to Minshew that there's a lot of things in his favor this Saturday. Okay, final thing, Mike, and then we're definitely getting out of here. We got a showdown tonight. We've got a game. It's the Jets. It's the Jaguars. We both like the Jets. I can see you're supporting the Jets with your Jets green on right now. This is going to be probably a sloppy game. It's going to be a little windy. It's going to be rainy. Is this kind of one of those games from a showdown standpoint that you maybe look to the kickers, you look to the defenses, you look to the running backs, and you call it a day? Is there maybe an unconventional play or a low-cost play that you like to throw in your showdown lineups?
Yeah, so I'm going to pull it up here and try and talk through it as I pull everything up. I've got it all up on Sportsline right now, by the way. If you are a Sportsline member, you can see all my exposures in there. But the most interesting thing here would be I've got a ton of the Jets defense. I've got a ton of the Jags defense. Look, my number one player is still Zach Wilson in terms of overall exposure. Number 2, Garrett Wilson. Number 3, Jets defense. Number 4, Jaguars defense. So love the defenses in this one. Very low on Trevor Lawrence relative to the field. Bet his unders. I like the defenses to shine here. Not massive on the kickers. It is going to be rainy. It is going to be windy. 100% chance of rain in this game. 17 to 20% ownership on them for me. So certainly not fading them completely, but not over the field like I am in some certain situations. A lot of defenses tonight.
All right. Absolutely love it. Mike, that's going to be our show. And we end it with such a great comment from Justin Goff, who, if anybody doesn't know, this Justin Goff is actually the brother of Jared Goff. Not true, but how cool would that be? He says LFG M squared. By the way, speaking of M squared, he did mention Sportsline. I believe, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe you don't know this. It's $10 a month for Sportsline, right?
At the very most. The most you could possibly pay for Sportsline would be $10 a month. There are specials all the time, sometimes $49 annuals. It's the absolute most you can pay is $10 a month.
And it's at the absolute best value you can get. I mean, it's really kind of ridiculous, but you can get a lot of some of the Sportsline content just from the shows that Sportsline does via the Early Edge. I'll be on later tonight at 7:30. Mike is on a lot of Sportsline shows, but Early Edge shows, but including a lot of the primetime shows for these football games. So maybe you'll see me later tonight at 7:30, but I encourage everybody to check out Sportsline because the data in there is actually, in my opinion, it's kind of unparalleled, particularly at the price. Thank you, everybody, for being in here with me and Mike. I will see you on Tuesday at 5 o'clock. Hopefully, I'll see you on Sunday and Saturday with your posted lineups about how much money you won. So, tweet out your lineups if you did really well this weekend. I hope you do. I hope you've joined our FFT DFS contest. To the new people in here, and I saw all of you kind of raise your hand saying, I'm new. Please make sure that you set your alerts, that you make sure you're in here at 5 o'clock on Tuesday and 5 o'clock on Thursday, because we do this every week for the NFL through the playoffs. Thank you again for joining us. FFT DFS, that's Mike. I'm Sia, and we will see you on Tuesday.